What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ready Gold Standard podcast. My name is Zach Hernandez, and this evening I'm joined by my guy Matt Llewellyn and our guy Mike Andrews, who's a little banged up down there. We'll get that explanation a little later. Before we do, if you're joining on Twitter, head over to youtube.com/49ershive. Join from there so we can see and interact with your comment. If you're commenting on Twitter, we're not ignoring it. We just cannot see it. With that said, Matt, how you doing this Wednesday evening?
You know, I'm doing good. I'm still, I don't know, a little hungover from the disappointment of Sunday. What happened, and I'm kind of, I don't know. It's a weird feeling, but I think, we got a big one this week, so I think we're gonna need to get into that.
Yeah, man. Before we went live, I'm like, I'm kind of numb, I guess is the word. I don't really know how to put it.
Yeah.
Mike, how are you doing and what's going on?
Yeah, man. So I tried to come up with this cool story to tell everybody. I was walking down the street, some guy said, "Yo, fuck the Niners," and bam, he hit me, and I'm like, "Oh man, sorry about the time. Damn, sorry." But it was nothing like that at all. I woke up in the middle of the night, probably 4 or 5 in the morning. My hair was in my eye, one of my locks, and I think it had been in my eye for a while, rubbing up against it. And so I couldn't see anything. And it was the weirdest thing, trying to open or keep one eye closed. The other one's getting all irritated because it's early in the morning as well. And I'm rubbing and making it worse. And so finally I ended up going to the urgent care. And the guy's like, "Oh, you've been having," I'm going to wait till 7 minutes to tell you guys the rest of the story. Never mind. But it was very interesting. He was wanting to know what kind of bedroom activities I had been partaking in, and if any of it involved a hot tub. And just told me straight up, "Oh, you have conjunctivitis. That's where it came from." I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm telling you that my eye hurts, not that it's gunk. There's no gunk or anything like that. Don't tell me I have conjunctivitis because you think I'm active in my bedroom. That's not how this works." So anyhow. So I got some numbing drops in there. Got to keep it closed for 24 hours. I go back for a follow-up appointment in the morning, and we'll see what happens. As far as the game, I guess we'll get into a review later on. I'll shut up.
Damn. All right. Well, hopefully that eye feels better soon. This one's going to be an interesting game to preview. Obviously, the 49ers are in a weird spot because they lose their starting quarterback, but they go back to their starting quarterback of the past, 4 or 5 years. I don't know how long Jimmy Garoppolo has been here now. So there's not as much of a drop off, if any, and I'll get into that explanation a little later. But they travel to Denver, Sunday Night Football. Denver, Matt, hasn't looked maybe as good as a lot of people thought. Is this a little bit of the early season jitters? Is it a new head coach, new quarterback getting used to each other type thing? What do you make of Denver coming into Sunday night?
I think it's a couple of things. I think that, Nathaniel Hackett, his decision-making has been very questionable on multiple plays. I think there's some friction there already between him and Russell Wilson. And I think that Russell Wilson isn't the Russell Wilson that we're accustomed to. He came into camp looking a little heavier. He looks a little slower. I don't know if he has the escapability that he used to have. And if he doesn't have that, then he's kind of a below average height pocket quarterback. And I don't know how effective that's going to be. I know that Denver gave him a ton of money and they expect big things out of him. And, they're still on the whole. I mean, he's like Broncos country, let's ride, but he's still, let Russ cook. To me, the question is Russ already cooked?
Okay, I like that. I saw a bunch of people in the comments on Twitter talking about, turns out he can only cook with a microwave. So maybe they are letting him cook in Denver, but the meal's not that good. Mike, we saw them lose with a boneheaded decision in Seattle week 1, them being Denver. And then last week, barely edge out a victory against the lowly, with all due respect, Houston Texans. How worried are you for this game?
I'm not really worried about it. To me, Russell Wilson and their offense isn't going to be the problem. We're hearing they might be without Judy. We're hearing that Surtain might be out as well. So you're missing star pieces, star skill players on both sides of the ball. Russell Wilson is still learning a new offense over this. This is our first time seeing him in a system where it's an actual system, right? Sorry about that. Hold on, let me get my camera back on. I don't know why it just randomly does this. All right. So this is our first time seeing him in an actual system, right? Like in Seattle, they weren't known for their offense. Like they weren't, their offensive coordinators were guys who just fly by the night. They didn't invest anything in the offensive line to even develop a real offense, right? It was kind of just like backyard football for 5 consecutive years over there, you know? This is a system that they want to implement. This is something that they want Russell Wilson to actually learn and operate in this system. Now, we don't know if the system's going to work. We don't know if Russell Wilson is going to work in that system. But I think our success is going to be on the shoulders of the quarterback and his limitations or lack thereof. So that's really what this game comes down to me. I have all the faith in the world in our defense against their offense. It's whether or not we can outscore them with the offense that we have.
Yeah, really well said. And you got into a little bit of the injuries there. I'm going to pull up the injury reports for both teams today. Let me get this overlay off. So we see, this is per Matt Mayoko, 49ers injury report for Wednesday. Eric Armstead pops on here with a foot injury that kept him out of practice. Offensive lineman Daniel Brunskill still not practicing, that hamstring injury. Terry Davis Price with the ankle injury. Tyler Kroft knee, and Trent Williams had a rest day. We did see, however, star tight end George Kittle returned to practice. He's dealing with that groin injury that kept him out since before the season started. Before we get into the Broncos report, Matt, any of this surprise you? What do you make of George Kittle returning? The jokes are out there, obviously, with Jimmy. What do you make of it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the original timetable for the injury. It just sucks that it's the optics of the situation that make it look like maybe George Kittle was sandbagging a little bit. Now that Jimmy's back in the fold, he's more excited to play. I think the media is making a little bit out of it as well. I know that some people were posting videos and like, oh, looks like the same old George Kittle. I think it'll be a boon for the team overall. It's just unfortunate that Trey Lance didn't get an opportunity to play with George Kittle before the injury. So it's a big return. They need that. That will keep the defense at least a little bit more honest until, they have reason to believe otherwise. And that's helpful too, because the 49ers are just pretty battered at running back. Marlon Mack to the active squad. Tevin Coleman somehow wormed his way back to the practice squad. Again, this team has gone through the ringer already. It seems like even numbered years, the 49ers just get decimated by injuries. We get decimated by injuries anyway, but particularly the even numbered years just seem to hit us really hard. So it's good to have George Kittle back in practice, but there's still a lot of guys that are sitting out that, it's going to be tough, and they got to find a way to limit these injuries as we progress into the season, because typically teams get less healthy as they go along, not more healthy.
Well said. Mike, the 49ers usually lose a couple of running backs throughout the year. The past 2 years, it's been week 1 they lose their starting running back. Are you a little surprised with how they went about the position this offseason, where they let JaMychal Hasty go? They let Trey Sermon go literally a day after making the final 53-man roster to pick up some offensive linemen from Cleveland, if I remember correctly. Are you surprised with how they handled that position?
I'm not surprised by it. They invest a lot in that offensive line, and I think that's going to continue to be a theme for the Niners until they can get some sustained success over there. But I was surprised at how quickly they cut Sermon, but we also understood why, right? Like, we had a really banged up offensive line. We weren't sure who was it? Oh, Mike McGlinchey. We weren't sure how he was going to be in full-time game action and things like that. And lo and behold, it turns out the offensive line is probably the best part of the whole team, right? Like, it's incredible how it works out. That was the part that everybody was nervous about. I was more nervous about the offensive line and their cohesion than I was Trey Lance. And then you look at this list here, and Trent Williams is the only offensive lineman listed there, and that was because it was a vet day. He wasn't injured at all, and these guys are out there and they're having a ball. They're dominating the offensive line. They're doing their thing. It's the running backs. I was talking to Ali while I was out in Cali, and he had like this theory, and I don't remember if it was like weeks 1 and 2 are always bad for the 49ers. That's when most of the injuries seem to happen, or the big injuries. We lost Trey Sermon for the whole year in week 2. He was talking about the year that we lost Bosa and Solomon Thomas. He went down this list, and it was actually pretty impressive.
that they lost Mostert that week too.
Yeah, we lost Mostert. Yeah, like weeks 1 and 2 are typically really bad for the 49ers when it comes to long-term. And Jimmy Garoppolo, that was the other one. It was Jimmy Garoppolo. How can I forget, right? And so then here we are now losing Trey Lance for the season. And so they got to do something. I don't know how much of what they can do. Just try to be prepared. That's why it's important to get that depth. And I'm not surprised that they went out and got Coleman back, because they can't bring back a guy like Sermon. Now we have to get someone who's familiar with the system and all that. But it was interesting to see that Mack leapfrogged him. They didn't sign Coleman to the active squad. Instead, what they decided to do was put him to the practice squad and bring Marlon Mack up from the practice squad. So that I thought was interesting. And after working these guys out multiple times and Kyle's familiarity with them, I thought Coleman would have, if I just had to, if you asked me at the beginning of the season, which guy is Kyle going to activate first, and they're both on your practice squad, my gut would have said Coleman, but we'll see. We'll see how it works out.
He hopefully he knows Coleman's trash, and maybe he's not quite sure Marlon Mack is fully washed yet. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to see what Marlon Mack's got before, because I already know what Coleman is. I got Matt's take on this. I heard you discuss this on your show last night, Mike, but there is, in this comment here from Anthony Colbert, a conspiracy that George Kittle is now magically healthy because Jimmy Garoppolo is back. He maybe wasn't a big fan of Trey Lance. Now that Jimmy's in there, suddenly he's able to practice and play. What do you make of this conspiracy theory?
Oh, it's just timing. It's timing about everything, George Kittle was supposed to be back between weeks 3 and 4 all along. It was never, that's why they questioned whether or not they were going to put him on IR. So it wasn't. I don't buy into the conspiracy theory. Of course, the thing with theories that you can't prove them, otherwise it wouldn't be a theory, right? So people are going to have fun with it. People are going to say and continue to try to divide the locker room, and hopefully this is all stuff that bands these guys together a lot more, makes these guys a lot closer. You know what I mean? So that's what I would like to see come out of all of this. And I'm looking at myself in the camera now that you got me at the top, and I notice that my head is turned. And I can't figure out why, but it's because I can't see on my left eye. So it's like I'm centered according to what I see on the screen, but when I look up, I'm like sideways. Get my good side, guys. Get my good side. Sorry, I thought that was funny. I'm sorry.
That is funny. Yeah, it is weird. I really, like Matt said, I really just think it's the timing of how it worked out. There is a comment. Sorry, I'm trying to move this back. There is a comment here from Hung Fat. I just don't like how suddenly they started saying it was a 3-week injury, like they always said that. I was always under the impression that he was basically day-to-day. Maybe I misread what the team was putting out, but it's like, oh, he was so close to going week 1, very close to going. And then week 2 comes, it was very close, he might go. And then, oh, no. And then all of a sudden they're like, he right on track, 3 weeks, he'll be back. I'm like, oh,
right.
Okay. I didn't know it was a 3-week injury.
If you remember what I said before we started the season, though, I always penciled in this Broncos game as his return. Like I was saying, you have 2 beatable teams in week 1. Now, they didn't beat the Bears, but they put a drubbing on the Seahawks. Week 3 against the Denver Broncos was always where I had George Kittle coming back, because that's when you can use the reinforcement the most, right? Don't waste him in Chicago. Don't waste him for a poor Seattle team. Waste him, get him back for a Denver team that presents, at least on paper, more danger than these other 2 teams, despite the fact that they're not playing well. And Denver's coming into the game banged up. That's something entirely different. But this is where I always thought he was going to come back as well. I think people are reacting to, I believe it was either Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport who said, oh, this was always a 3-week injury. And that is just like, dude, you didn't know that. You're just making things up. It's speculation because you figured out, oh, Kittle's probably not going to play in week 2, but he'll definitely play for Denver, right? Because that's what everybody was under the belief, that a primetime game against a marquee team, they need this victory. That's going to be where he was always going to come back for me. So it kind of made logical sense.
And not only that, the team has the obligation to create a competitive advantage wherever they can. Make it seem like Kittle is coming back. So Zach, you didn't misread anything. They kept saying, "Oh, we'll see, we'll see, we'll see," but we amongst ourselves as we were talking, he's not playing week 1. He's not playing week 2. They kept doing that, but again, that's to create the competitive advantage, and the faithfuls have to understand that. That the fan base has to understand that the national media is not going to get it, right? Because they're not as tapped in and watching and listening to everything. When a person doesn't practice all week long, I don't care if it's George Kittle, you're not likely to play. They've been giving those reps to someone else for a reason. Seeing that he was limited today, that's a good sign, right? But they should have been saying that all along for the competitive advantage, if you want to try to fool the people closer to the situation.
Yeah, really good points. Let's get into the Broncos injury report for Wednesday, September 21st, as we're recording here. Randy Gregory, defensive end, did not practice. All the following players did not practice. Randy Gregory with a knee injury, wide receiver Jerry Jeudy with a rib and a shoulder injury, defensive tackle DJ Jones, ankle injury, guard Quinn Miners, hamstring injury, corner Darius Phillips, hamstring injury, and corner Patrick Surtain with a shoulder injury. And limited were wide receiver KJ Hamler, knee and hip injury, and linebacker Josie Jewell, calf injury, and safety Caden Stearns, hip injury. Obviously, there are some pretty big names here as far as talent for the Broncos. Mike, I'm going to go right back to you. If the Broncos are without Jeudy, Jones, Surtain, they're looking like a totally different team. But I also saw that they were kind of day-to-day. Are you leaning towards having them or going against them, I should say, or not, or way too early to tell?
From my understanding, Jerry Jeudy was supposed to be missing 2 weeks. But that was me like digging through Broncos fans' tweets and things like that. I was trying to do what, the research, unlike, how the national media is going to do. I didn't think Jeudy was going to play in this game. And I also didn't think Surtain was going to play in this game. I don't know about anybody else. And is Darius Phillips, is he a starter for them? Yeah, you think so? Okay. I wasn't sure about him either. I found out about that later. But this, I believe it or not, if these guys don't go, I think that makes them more dangerous. I really do. It's easier to study tape of people who have had a week and a half, you know what I mean, or things like that with Russell Wilson to see their timing and their rapport off. This, to me, plays into the strength of Russell Wilson, that backyard football element that we were talking about, of what they did so well here in Seattle, right? I think that makes them more dangerous. It's a bunch of people with no names. Okay, he's not a starter, so I apologize. Darius Phillips is not a starter, just a depth guy. But to me, this bodes well for them. We don't know who is the number 1 guy right now. You know what I'm saying? We don't know who the number 2 guy is going to be on the offense for the wide receiver position. So who are we really studying? Who are we focusing on the defense? Or do we just say, forget it, and we're going to play a lot of man and just, play that? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see the defensive plan for this game and how they choose to attack us as well.
Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
I mean, you're going to focus on Cortland Sutton. That's who you're going to focus on. And this is a team, I know you talk about the backyard football. I don't believe that Russell Wilson has that same ability again to get away. He just doesn't. He looks slow. He's not the same guy. I think a lot of players out in the NFL have noticed it. Former teammates have noticed it. He's not the same escapability. And it's, I think, a huge reason why he struggled so far this year and really struggled last year as well in times. He started out hot and then broke the thumb, was it? And then came back and looked really average for a lot of those weeks, and then had a really couple of good games later in the season, but he didn't look like he was escaping. There was visible frustration from offensive teammates at times with Russell Wilson, and I just think that he's on the natural decline of his career. When you start out as a small guy to begin with, an undersized guy, and your key to fame is athleticism, I mean, we've seen it with Michael Vick, we've seen it with others, and Russell Wilson is not that level of athlete, but when you're undersized and you lose the ability to escape, get away, move up in the line, you're not able to do those things. I mean, we saw it from Drew Brees. Drew Brees' his last couple of years was a completely different quarterback. Now, Drew Brees was so polished and so refined as a passer that he could get away with the dink and dunk offense. Russell Wilson seems like he's still playing like he has that athleticism, and he doesn't. Tom Brady can be successful because Tom Brady's 6'4", and 20 pounds or whatever, those guys can last a little bit longer because the height is still there, right? But Brady can still zip it down the field, and he was never a burner to begin with. So with Brady, you're looking at his skill set will hold up for a longer period of time, whereas Russell Wilson, his escapability was a huge part of his game. The ability to get out on the edge, make defenders miss, give the receivers time for the coverage to break down, and then he can fire it down there. I don't think he has that anymore. And if you take away Cortland Sutton, if Jerry Jeudy's not playing, he's not left with a whole lot.
Right. And to further your point, with Drew Brees at the end of his career, he was already making those adjustments. He knew he was past his prime. He was out of his element. Russell Wilson's in that phase right now where he has to realize he's out of his prime, and now he has to make those adjustments. And I think there's a little bit of denial. How old is he? 31, 32, something like
32, that? I think. Yeah, 32.
Yeah, so I know how I felt when I was 32. I felt like I'm still in my prime. I got 3 more good years left as far as physical ability, right? I might not be as fast as I was when I was, in my 20s, but as far as strength and the ability to throw and, cerebral, I felt like I was still just as sharp. He's looking at that phase right now, and he's got to come to grips with reality sooner than later if they're going to salvage their season over there in Denver.
And the thing is, once Judy's healthy, of course, he has some weapons that he can rely on so that he doesn't have to be Seattle Russell Wilson. A lot of those times he was working behind patchwork offensive line, all this stuff. He actually has some tools in Denver that he doesn't need to be the put it on my shoulders guy anymore. So I think his best years in Seattle were when he could lean on guys like Marshawn Lynch, where he can lean on, some of those wide receivers that the Doug Baldwins and, types like that, where he didn't have to be the guy all the time. It was no coincidence, I think, that once he became the man and it was about letting Russ cook, that the team suffered for it overall. And they were either fringe playoff team or they were just out of the playoffs altogether. And I think Russell Wilson, you can tell he's a little bit delusional, and I can appreciate a man visualizing and stuff. But when he was pretending to walk out of the tunnel and high-fiving the air, it's just where are you at, man? And we always say that he's kind of corny and stuff like that, but there's a little bit of corniness, and then there's the beyond where you're just starting to slip into delusional territory. And I think somebody's got to wake him up. I just don't know if it's Nathaniel Hackett, because by his own admission, he is not doing a great job so far.
Also, I saw I forget who commented it, but talking about Richard Sherman having KJ Wright on his Richard Sherman show over on the Volume. I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch it. I watched it about a few hours ago, actually, but they were going in on Russell Wilson, and it was very, very interesting to see. Richard Sherman has been basically all out against Russell Wilson this year, and it's really funny to see, just as somebody who dislikes Russell Wilson. They were talking just about how he would make everything about himself, how he would get the favoritism. And then KJ Wright made a really good point. He's like, he's got 2 really, really good backs in Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. Yet I get the feeling he's the one going to Hackett saying, I want to put the ball in my hands. I want to pass more, yada, yada, yada. And I think the 49ers need to be wary of Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon may be not as slow as he once was, but he's still a very capable back. And Javonte Williams is a very, very good back. So the 49ers defense might have their hands full all day. Mike, I'm going to throw it back to you. How are you feeling about how they can handle guys like Williams, Gordon, and whoever else the Broncos have in their running back stable?
Yeah, I have no reason to doubt this defensive line as of right now. Eric Armstead's foot injury might be something that we need to keep an eye on there. But the defensive line, the run game, we're dominating right now. We're really dominating, and teams that know that they need to run the ball on the Niners haven't been able to do it yet. So I like what we're seeing from them as far as so I'm not really concerned about who it is. We just have to stay sound, and that's what those linebackers are there for as well. So I like it. I like our odds.
Okay, I like that. I think that the 49ers defense has been extremely good. Granted, I keep trying to level myself back down because I'm they played, iffy Bears team in the rain and a rebuilding Seahawks team. Just Fields, Geno Smith, they weren't elite quarterbacks, but I still like what I saw. Matt, what do you expect from the 49ers defense Sunday night? More of the same?
Absolutely. You can tell this defense flies to the ball. They get after it. They're very athletic. They're very quick. They like contact. They like getting up in people's faces. And, I don't have it off the top of my head. I can pull it up here. But, I mean, the defense has been pretty good. Geno Smith for the Seahawks, like 30 pass attempts and under 200 yards, right? His completion percentage was high, but it was all underneath stuff. Justin Fields had those 2 touchdown passes, but you take those 2 touchdown passes away, and he was 6 of 15 for like 50 yards and an interception. He just wasn't very good without those touchdown passes. They're good against the run once again, which has been kind of a staple in a lot of ways, that they've been good against at least running backs. The problem the 49ers have, and it showed once again against the Bears, was mobile quarterbacks still give them fits because they pursue so hard that if a quarterback can escape, it's a problem. Normally, I'd say Russell Wilson could be that problem, but as I've said before, I don't think he is the Russell Wilson of old, and I think they're going to be able to contain him better than they have before. I expect this defense to get after Russell Wilson, force him to make some mistakes, keep getting that learning curve steeper for Nathaniel Hackett when he actually has to play, an outstanding defense rather than, we talk about the 49ers defense because they've played, 2 bad teams or whatever. One of the teams that they just absolutely shellacked was the one that beat Denver in week 1. And then Denver had to scrape and claw and scratch for a victory over the Texans, for God's sake. So this is not exactly a Denver team that's lighting the world on fire, getting after it, and looks like a world beater. This is a team that is also struggling to come into its own. But at least we know from the 49ers side, the defense is something that we have relied on in the past, and it looks like we're going to continue to rely on this week and going forward.
Really well said. Touching on the 49ers defense, they're averaging 9.5 points per game. They gave up 19 in Chicago, and they didn't give up any last week. So I'm not putting that touchdown on them. That was a blocked field goal, blocked field goal taken back for a touchdown. So they essentially shut out the Seahawks last week, only gave up 19 and essentially 2 broken plays. It should have been 21, but whatever. I'm going to credit them to 19. So they are doing really, really well. And I think that's going to continue this Sunday night in Denver. And Russell Wilson, I know, like you said, he's able to kind of give the 49ers fits with the mobility. But, Matt, I think you're spot on. The mobility is not so much. I forget who commented in the chat. He's 85% at most of what he was in Seattle in his prime years. Wow, we got a super chat from our guy, John Chapman. Says, talk about a power team. Love the show, guys. Thank you very much, John. Shout out to the 49ers podcast. You do a fantastic job over there.
Absolutely. We love you, John.
Thank you.
That's my guy right there. What's up, John?
So moving it over on the flip side, I think we know what to expect from the 49ers defense. Mooney, Ward, Hufanga, who, by the way, I just saw is leading the team in tackles with 17. The guy is a freaking ball magnet. He gets there so quick. Let's throw it over to the flip side. The offense. Now we are kind of preparing for the past, I don't even know how long, 8 months, 6 months, for what to expect from Trey Lance. We got 4 quarters and 2 drives, and now that's out the window for the year. What do we expect again from Jimmy Garoppolo? Mike, he's healthy. I say that with air quotes because he's been healthy before and we've seen his expectations. But now that he's healthy, what do you expect from him moving forward? This is a better Niners team. I'm just going to throw that out there and I'll let you answer.
Are you asking what do I expect in this game or throughout the season?
Let's start with this game. Yeah.
Okay. So I, for one, was actually impressed with some of the throws Jimmy Garoppolo was making in this game. The touchdown pass, he threw a lot of passes well outside the hashes, downfield a little bit more. It seemed like, he was playing with this, I don't really care. This was 2017 Jimmy Garoppolo, when he was out there doing his thing, not the dink and dunk stuff. He did mix some of that in. Let me be very clear with what I'm saying. He did mix a lot of that stuff in there. But there weren't a lot of the, Jimmy, what the hell are you doing, please? And that was me watching it live. Now I have to go back and rewatch it on TV a couple more times to really give a full assessment of him. But if he continues to play the way that he was in this last game, he will have defenses respecting guys like Ayuk. The pass attempt to, was it McLeod, I believe? He even had a deep one that he tried to get to Danny Gray. A little underthrown, but you still have to make those throws, whether they're completed or not, to make the defenses respect you. And I think that's like in his head now. Like, let me try to have some fun with these weapons also. You know, he hasn't had that since Marquise Goodwin was here. You know, so I liked what I saw from Jimmy. Not to say that he's like, you know, significantly improved or anything like that, but the mindset, at least so far, seems to be different. Now, he could have just been going in there and having to run the plays that were called because the rest of the team worked on those plays. But we'll see what the game plan is like for him in this game. I'm not quite sure how it's going to look. But I think he'll be competent. I think we'll be competitive enough on the offensive side of the ball, especially if George Kittle's back. You can always depend on the short passes to guys like him and Debo across the middle to open some things up for the rest of the team.
You know, I can see where you're coming from with the Jimmy Garoppolo, the mindset, the laissez-faire attitude. I'm going to come in and I'm just going to play. I mean, he should have that attitude. He's essentially playing for his next job. It's a contract year, so he should come in and kind of throw caution to the wind and really put it out there on tape. And I thought he did a good job of that early. Like you said, there were some throws outside of the numbers. I'm wondering if when Kyle said we were still on script when Jimmy Garoppolo came into the game, if that was true, then those were throws that would have been more in Trey Lance's wheelhouse, and that was just the read that Jimmy had to make in the throw, right? Because it seemed after the first like 2 drives or so, it was 2021 Jimmy Garoppolo all over again. It's like the man throws a hell of a tunnel screen. I'll give him that, right? And it's a lot of yak. But the down the field stuff was primarily on that first and second drive. And then after that, I really didn't see a lot of it. So the jury's still out on what Jimmy Garoppolo wants to do. But my biggest concern is that running back room. They need to get that running back room right. They need to get somebody in there that can take some of the pressure off, because this is going to look like the 2019 49ers. It's going to look like last year's 49ers, where Jimmy Garoppolo is going to prop himself up on the running game and on the back of a great defense. And that's going to be more of the same this year. It's why I'm still excited about the team, but that for whatever reason, I feel like they're going to be a little less fun to watch, if that makes sense. They have a lot of talent and they're going to be good, but I don't think they're going to be as interesting, because we've seen that it's like, you know, when you listen to your favorite record and it's pretty comfortable, right? But you were looking forward to that new hotness and it's just not, it's sold out. Like that's how I feel right now. It's like, all right, I like the artist, but I've listened to these songs before.
And you're absolutely right. You know, I did give him his props for the down the field attempts and things like that. But I do remember talking to the guys at halftime. We tried to do a halftime show, but the reception was trash. And I said, guys, we're probably not going to score anymore. We did end up getting one more touchdown there. But it was, you're right. It was like back to normal, Jimmy. So I do want to sprinkle that in there as well. You're right.
To touch on the contract year comments that you discussed, Matt, Hung Fat, again, contract year times 10, since you know he'll be somewhere else next year. So this is a season-long audition. This could be the fire that gets lit under his ass, is the fact that he knows essentially this is 15 games of tape for me to put out there for another team to see. He essentially just got told by every team in the league, we're all right. Actually, we got Baker. Actually, we got Davis Mills. Actually, we got Carson Wentz.
Mitch
Trubisky. So hopefully that's the fire that lights under his ass and actually drives him to play a little better. Maybe hits a linebacker every other game instead of every game. So I'm just really, really hoping that's what he needs. He made an interesting comment after the show, which some people took it as Kyle Shanahan possibly holding him back. Matt, he basically said, yeah, there are some things that I was used to, some things I wasn't used to, but it felt good being out there, kind of being able to do what I wanted to do. I forget the exact quote. Do you think Kyle Shanahan holds him back at all? Would that make any sense?
I mean, it makes sense from the fact of Jimmy thinks that he can do some things that he really can't do, and Kyle's kind of trying to protect the team from some of the things that Jimmy Garoppolo thinks he can do and can't do. Jimmy loves to throw a ball in traffic. That's just something he likes to do. Jimmy Garoppolo, and we saw it in 2018 to start the season, when he was throwing outside the numbers a lot, he was getting picked a lot. Let's not forget that first game against the Bucs where he had a pick six on like a 5-yard out route that he just did not see the cornerback and I forget who the corner was that picked it off. It was somebody. It was Vernon Hargreaves, I think, that picked it off and took it to the house. And then the next week against the Minnesota Vikings, everybody remembers that one throw to Dante Pettis to the back of the end zone. Wow, that thing looked great, right? But he also had 3 picks in that game. You're talking about, I believe he had 2 in the first game too. So he had like 5 picks in 2 games. And then he, blew out his knee against Kansas City, another game where he wasn't playing well. And this is like, everybody talks about pre-ACL Jimmy. This was pre-ACL Jimmy. This was just extended playing time Jimmy that we didn't get to see. Okay. Jimmy Garoppolo between the numbers, intermediate, pretty good when the linebacker's not lurking, right? He can throw that 10-yard dig route or whatever, pretty good. He can throw a slant. He can throw a tunnel screen. He can do those things. Jimmy throws outside the numbers very rarely because Kyle very rarely draws it up. And even sometimes when he draws it up wide open, like we saw last year on a wheel route with Juszczyk where Jimmy overthrew him by 15 yards, that even wide open is not a guarantee with him. So he can say that, he's going to do this and he's going to do that, and that remains to be seen. But, I mean, I'm telling you guys right now, I'm expecting at least 1 interception against the Denver Broncos on a play where we're going to be like, God damn it, Jimmy.
Mike, before I throw it to you, I think you said it perfectly there, Matt. Jimmy probably thinks he's held back in the same way a toddler thinks they're held back when their mom doesn't let them touch the hot stove. It's like, I want to do it. I want to do it. You just don't know better. And that's probably what Kyle Shanahan is thinking. You just don't know better, Jimmy. I'm doing what's best for you. You don't even know it. Mike, I'm going to throw it to you. What do you make out of this 49ers wide receiver core? Is it going to be back to these 5-7 yard passes above the line of scrimmage to Deebo Samuel and make them work for it? These deep passes have got to be gone, right?
Probably. But, there's some ways that Kyle can still continue to help Jimmy, right? Like more 3 wide receiver sets. Get one of those linebackers that are just camouflage to him off of the field. You know what I mean? Like you can do 3 wide receiver sets and try to spread the defenses out some more to give Jimmy more space to make some more throws. We've heard Jimmy oftentimes say things like, "Hey, I just run the plays that are called." Like he's kind of done this throughout his career. So the comments that you mentioned originally, it's not anything new with him. But the wide receiving core is a lot better. There's a lot more speed. There's a lot more dynamic. You have guys like Brandon Ayuk who have all the confidence in the world. We couldn't say the same thing last year or the year before. So these guys are ready to go out there and show like, hey, we belong at the top of these lists when we're talking about wide receiver cores in the NFL. Jimmy's got to be able to deliver these guys the ball now. And I think Kyle can do some more things with that to help Jimmy, even with his limitations, help that toddler. He's got to figure out how to make him know that the stove is hot, so.
It's just the best way to put it, unfortunately. Matt, did you have something to share?
Yeah, I mean, and we know that's the case, right? It's Jimmy throws to linebackers over and over and over again. He doesn't learn from its mistakes. So, again, it's Kyle protecting him from himself. But I find it interesting to whereas Trey Lance always says, oh, I got to get better. I got to do this. I got to do that. Jimmy goes, it was nice to not be held back by somebody. And it shows the difference in attitude between the two. And it's why I was very, very reluctant to think about Jimmy Garoppolo as the starting quarterback and why I'm reluctant about the rest of the season and what we're going to be watching. So I know a lot of people are saying Danny Gray is about to be irrelevant. Here's what I think. Jimmy Garoppolo has had a couple of deep balls where he's just overthrown the target. I don't think that Jimmy Garoppolo can overthrow Danny Gray. If I was going to drop one back to Danny Gray, it's like if you're throwing it to Danny Gray, Jimmy, just huck it as far as you can and let that 4.3 speed just run right underneath it. It's the same thing. I mean, we saw Tua do it with Tyreek Hill last week when he threw 6 touchdown passes. Just throw the ball for him. and see if he can go get it. And those are the type of plays where, especially on a fly route, if you're going to throw that 9 down the side of the field, you'd rather overthrow it than underthrow it. At least you know your receiver is going to get it, particularly on the sideline where you're protected against the safety a little bit and you have the sideline as your friend. Throw it up there once a game for him. If he ends up with 3 or 4 touchdowns, that's a pretty good rookie season, and he can build off that. I don't think that he's going to be as impactful as he would have been had Trey Lance stayed healthy, but there are still things that you can do for Danny Gray. I actually think another way to do it too is to use him on some of those tunnel screens. You think Debo's fast on those screens. I mean, you get Danny Gray in there and you get Danny Gray working in space and he could take one. So there are ways to work him in. There are ways that I think the 49ers will adjust and try to use him. Anything that you can do to get Jimmy Garoppolo more help is probably a good thing.
And he's also like what I think the difference with Debo and Gray, Debo does have the speed for sure, right? But Debo is also really good for making the first guy miss. I don't know if Danny Gray has that in him yet. You know, the build, the body type, and things like that. And he's not a small guy by any means, but he's not physical like how Debo is. And so it's going to be really important to break that one tackle so that the screen can be successful.
Right. I will say this though. I don't think Raheem Mostert was good at making the one guy miss. It's just when you're so overwhelmingly fast, sometimes you don't need to make him miss. Sometimes he's just going to miss by virtue of not being able to touch you to begin with. So we can see.
I just wanted to share this, talking about Deebo Samuel and his ability. Look at this play. Like, this is just still, I saw it happen, obviously, but just seeing it from above, there are one, two, three, let's even do three Seahawks right in front of Deebo Samuel. Yet somehow this turns into this. Just amazing. It really is amazing. And that's the stuff you can't teach.
You counted the 3, but if you go back to the first one, there's a guy on the ground who had already missed him. I think it was like number 22 or something like that. There's someone already down there that tried to get him and missed him. So, I mean, it's just completely incredible what he's capable of when he gets the ball in his hands. And Debo will follow his blockers also. A lot of times guys with speed will try to outrun their blockers and just get upfield right away. Debo has a little bit more patience. That vision that they said, that most running backs have, Debo possesses that as well.
Yeah. I will say this too. Another guy that has, and I was watching it against the Seahawks, who has a great talent for making that first guy miss, is Ray McLeod on those punt returns. There was a couple times where he fielded it. The dude was right in his face, and it was just the most subtle move you've ever seen. The dude was just shot right by him. I was like, that's pretty outstanding. Like, if he can house like 1 or 2 this year, it'll be better than what we've had the last few years. But I've been pretty impressed with the way that he at least fields the punts, if not his returns so far. I think that, rainy conditions could have played a part in that. But, man, you get him in a place like SoFi Stadium where it's a clean track and it's fast. Look out, man. He could pop one quick.
Although, damn, does it make me nervous seeing that ball in the air, knowing he hasn't called it for a catch. The defender's like 2 yards away, catches it, and somehow jukes him out. It is really impressive. Just to touch on Danny Gray, I don't think that we should be resigned to the fact that he's simply a speedster. We saw him in the preseason running some routes underneath that he was looking pretty good in. So I think Jimmy Garoppolo hopefully can help him develop his full route tree instead of just, go out there and run long, go deep, run fast, run straight. Hopefully we can get a full receiver out of Danny Gray, and that would just complement Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Juwan Jennings immensely.
Well, and we've seen it time and time again particularly with rookie 49ers wide receivers. The person they are at the beginning of the season is not who they are at the end. I mean, Dante Pettis had growth from the beginning to the end of the season. He fell off in year 2, but, it was there. Brandon Ayuk at the end of his first season, then got into the doghouse. Let's just hope the year 2 thing doesn't continue. But if trend is on track, Danny Gray should get better as the season progresses and as he gets more comfortable with his offense. Because I guarantee you, Kyle is asking him things that SMU never asked him to do. So, it'll just be interesting to see how he can adjust. And if he can, that speed kills. We know it, right? That's why Miami was able to make that comeback. I mean, beyond just Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle is fast too. And Josh McDaniels is like, all right, I'm running one deep. I'm running one underneath. Fuck you guys. Try to stop it. That's how that goes.
Yep. So touching on this real quick, I know we talked about the defense already, but Anthony Colbert is asking how nasty the defense is going to be with Jimmy Ward. It's pretty nasty already. I'm just going to say Lombardi tweeted out PF5's top 5 graded safeties to start the season 2 weeks in, Number 1, Minkah Fitzpatrick. Number 2, Talanoa Hufanga. Number 3, Mike Edwards. 4, Jamal Adams. And who else but number 5, Deshaun Gibson for the 49ers. This guy was just supposed to be a veteran kind of placeholder while Jimmy Ward's out. Turns out he's playing pretty well. Mike, do you think that that's just kind of how the stats show? Maybe they're lying a little bit to us?
No, I don't think they're lying. The guys are actually playing really well. They're communicating in a phenomenal way. And I don't know if they're overcompensating because Jimmy Ward was not out there. And even that interception play where Hufanga tips it up in the air and Gibson, I believe it was the one who came down with it. I don't know if Jimmy Ward makes that interception because he's so assignment tight. I don't know if he's lurking like that. I don't know if he's playing, once Talanoa's over there, I'm going to be back over here on this side. I don't know how it works out. I'm going to be very excited to see how the dynamic changes in 2 weeks when Jimmy Ward returns. So
it will be interesting to see.
Honestly, I think it's real too. Look back at Deshaun Gibson's career. Where has he played? He started as an undrafted free agent with the Cleveland Browns, played there for 5 years, went to Jacksonville, played there for a couple seasons, then went to the Houston Texans, then went to the Chicago Bears. I mean, he's had a lack of talent around him and has been able to carve out a very respectable career. And now we're surprised that somebody who was an undrafted free agent and has, a 10-year career in the NFL, we're surprised that when he's surrounded by good talent can still make plays. I mean, I'm not that surprised. I know that Jimmy Ward is a better player overall, but in terms of, I agree with Mike, I think as someone who can catch an interception and has a little bit more of a ball hawk mentality, I think Deshaun Gibson is right there. And I think it's pretty clear. I mean, Jimmy Ward has 4 career interceptions. Gibson has 28. So there's a huge difference there. And that's 28 on bad teams.
Two of which were in one game last year. Just want to throw that in there real quick for Ward.
Exactly. Right. So, I mean, he's, he's nice. He's nice, and he's been nice for us. And I think that this is a nice reintroduction to Deshaun Gibson. And, it's a boon for the 49ers that they were able to just scoop this guy up.
It's funny you guys were talking about all these guys undrafted. You just step back for a second, right? Emmanuel Mosley, Javarius Ward, Gibson, right? And the only guy that was drafted in our secondary is Talanoa Hufanga. Like, think about that for a second. It's pretty incredible what the Niners are able to do with these guys. I think it's pretty
and
impressive.
Womack too, by the way. Womack was drafted.
That's right.
Yeah. I know the third round guy is on the bench and can't seem to get any run. So pretty interesting. I saw Steve pointed out Jason Verrett should be back soon as well. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that would just be an extra addition too. Whatever you can get out of Verrett, take it.
Yeah, I've been extremely impressed with Mosley and Ward, specifically Ward. I think the 49ers are getting their money's worth throughout 2 games this year. Basically shut down Bears wide receivers, Seahawks wide receivers, and hopefully he can do it again Sunday night.
I love that he's a no glove guy too. I really find that fascinating, and I kind of like it a lot that he's a no glove guy. Yeah. I respect the shit out of that.
Don't see it too much anymore. No. All right, we're going to get into our offensive, defensive, and final score predictions. But before we do, we got to thank today's sponsor. You guys already know who it is. It's our guys over at Mybookie. 49ers winning season took a week to get going, but it is here. I know it's hard to think of a winning season when, unfortunately, something like an injury happens, but they are 1-1, and it's time for you to get your winning season kicked off. If you haven't already, you can head over to Mybookie.ag, sign up with promo code Hive, as in 49ers Hive, and get your first deposit doubled instantly. You deposit $50, they'll make it $100. You deposit $100, they'll make it $200. Take advantage of the double deposit bonus today. This is designed to make the games and sports that you and I all love more fun, more exciting. So take advantage today. Make sure you sign up. Thursday Night Football is right around the corner. If you're watching this live, it's tomorrow. If you're watching this after, it's probably today. So go to Mybookie.ag, sign up with promo code Hive, like I said, and take advantage of the double deposit bonus with MyBookie. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. Shout out to them for sponsoring the show. We appreciate you very much, MyBookie. All right, with that said, Matt, I already know who your defensive is, so let's start with offense. Offensive MVP prediction.
Yeah, I think that the return of George Kittle is going to be huge. So I'm going to pick George Kittle, 5 catches, 90 yards, a touchdown.
Damn, first game back right into the action. All right. For our SFvsDEN Trail on one's wine. We have that here. This episode is brought to you by MyBookie, though. Mike, offensive MVP prediction.
I'm going to stick with my offensive lineman, man. I'm going to go with Aaron Banks again. I feel like that's who I said before, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I wanted to go and see. And Aaron Banks is playing like a top guard in the entire NFL. This is someone who took so much flack from the fan base. People ready to call him a bust. That stupid stat came out about second-round picks who played the least, and he was at the top of the list. But he is out there, and dare I say, he's helping Trent Williams. There's been plays where you just see him going over to just lay the wood on people that Trent Williams is holding up, and he's holding up fine, but this guy is constantly looking for someone, getting to the second level, blocking linebackers, 10, 15 yards down the field. This guy is hungry, and he likes to make contact. He's got this old school Alex Boone kind of feel to him, that nastiness, and he's just, this big, massive guy throwing people around. I absolutely love to see it. I'm sticking with my offensive lineman. I'm going to go with Aaron Banks again. I know he's not going to put up any stats. There's nothing that you're going to be able to see, but what is it? No sacks allowed by any of our interior guys. 1 pressure between the 3 of them or something like that. So these guys are out there and they're playing really, really good football right now.
This one's tough for me. By the way, I like that. Totally out of the box. Wouldn't have thought of an offensive lineman for MVP, but I like it. Man, I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to go with Jeff Wilson Jr. And I know he's got a lot of flack from the fans, even including our own group chat. People don't think he's it. I thought he looked pretty good Sunday against the Seahawks. Wasn't amazing, obviously, but he was solid. He's got a little more of the pressure now that TDP's out. I know they called up Marlon Mack, or they signed to the active roster, that is. I'm going to say Jeff Wilson Jr., and I'm going to say 13 carries, 110 yards, and a touchdown. I think he goes over 100 this Sunday night. All right, defensive MVP, Matt. Hit us.
Nick Bosa, 3 sacks and a motherfucking forced fumble, baby.
What's up, Mike?
3 sacks. I was going to ask a question really quick, but we already transitioned. So
go ahead.
Who gets the goal line carries? I see, and I think that's why a guy like Jeff Wilson Jr. doesn't get the accolades, right? He's doing what he's supposed to do as a ball carrier for the Niners, but because he's not getting in the end zone, people are like, yeah, he's not it. But they're pulling him out and putting in Ty Davis Price at the goal line and then handing it off to Juice. If he gets some goal line carries or gets a touchdown or two, I think their tone changes. If he has the same exact numbers from the time that he's been in here, but a touchdown or two sprinkled in over the first two weeks, I think we're like, yeah, he's good. He can do it. He can handle it.
I think they stick with Juice for the goal line carries. We saw that last week. Worked out all right with them. I think that that's what they stay with. Unfortunately, I would like for them to go to a back, but who do they have? No one. Also, I did not know that Jeff Wilson was a former wide receiver. Makes sense now that he's their best pass catching back. All right, Matt, hit us with his Nick Bosa, 3 fumbles, forced fumble, 3 sacks, forced fumble. I got that totally mixed up. Mike, defensive MVP prediction.
Oh man, my gut is saying to go with Talanoa Hufanga. He, like you said, leading the team in tackles. I think he gets his hand on 2 balls this game. Pauls. I think he comes away with 2 picks this game. 7 tackles, 2 picks.
Damn, that's a lot. I'm gonna go with Fred Warner, the captain of the defense. Kind of an easy one, but somebody who's familiar with Russell Wilson, maybe feels that little bit of extra oomph in his step having to step up for this guy, Trey Lance, going out. We saw him being one of the first to go over to Trey Lance once he was injured on Sunday. And I think as a leader of the team, he steps it up. And I think he gets his hands on one. I'm going to say an interception and 8 tackles. Hell of a game for Fred. All right, final score predictions. We're going to wrap this up. Again, guys, comment your predictions in the chat. If you get it right, we'll send you merch. I think one person ever has only gotten it right since we've been doing this, and it was like on an Instagram post a couple of years ago. So throw your predictions at us. We'd love them if you get them right. Matt, who do you got final score?
I'm going to go with the 49ers here. I just think that there's a lot of injuries on the offensive side of the ball for the Broncos where they've been struggling already. Russell Wilson just looks like he's washed to me. He's on the backside of his career, and Nathaniel Hackett looks completely lost, separated from where he was before. So I'm going to go with the 49ers getting a key win on the road. I'm going to say 24-21.
All right, Mike.
Wow. Yeah, I'm going to – I don't think they're putting up 21 points on this defense. I'm going to go with
one of those will be a Jimmy Garoppolo pick six.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's different. All right, that makes a lot more sense. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go 24 for the Niners, and I'm gonna say 17 for the Broncos. I like your thinking there, Ted.
All right. I'm gonna say 49ers 27, Broncos 13. I think we keep the Broncos under 14, under 2 scores roughly, and the 49ers get the job done. I don't know, comfortably. Maybe at the end it'll be comfortably, probably a close one. I don't know. For some reason, I circled this game going into the year thinking it would be a lot tougher than it probably will be. But I also thought the Broncos would hit the ground running. We haven't seen that. So that's it for our predictions. I think that's going to wrap up our show. Like I said, comment your predictions if you haven't already. Tweet them at us at 49ers Hive. Our handles are below on the screen if you want to tweet us individually. Mike, let the folks know where to find you. Thank you very much for joining us, even with your injured eye.
Yeah, absolutely. So the handle's right here. You guys can see it. That's my Twitter handle right there. Mike Andrews 83. And then the other one I'm going to plug. I'm not going to plug our YouTube page, but I will plug our new Instagram. We got hacked. So the new Instagram handle is nothing but Niners, but it's a 9. Nothing but 9 ERS. So if you guys still follow the old one, they changed it up. They put some hashtags in there. Please block, report them, and follow the new one. Nothing but 9 ERS on IG. Yes, thank you very much.
Sucks. I saw that post. I'm like, damn. Anytime they're talking about flipping money, man, I know these accounts are gone. They're hitting them a lot lately. Matt, you want to carry us out?
Absolutely. Last week didn't go the way that we wanted to. It was a little bit of a blow. I think the best remedy for that is for the boys to go out to Denver and beat that Bronco ass. So Niners country, let's ride. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you as always for joining us. We love having you here. Let's go knock that corny motherfucker into the ground. All right. With that being said, thank you for being here. And until next time, go Niners.